Okay, we're reconvening the City Commission work session, and we're down to item, well, there's no item number, so it's just Commission Committee reports. So obviously Commissioner O'Donnell is attending the AWWA conference down here with me, and we've actually seen each other maybe once. So I'll jump to Commissioner Smith.
Did we finish item 2?
Item 2? Oh no, we didn't finish item 2.
Wheeler is
Sorry,
sitting
let's
in
go
front
back.
of us here looking expectantly, ready to say something.
The C4 retreat. I wanted to get right to that in Adam's statement. So let's go back to item number 2. So discussion of a systems development charge grant program or something thereof. So where we left off on this, Mr. Conkle?
He's actually stepped out of the room, but Josh is ready to continue.
Oh, Josh, are you still there? I can't see. Oh, now I can see you.
I am still here, and Mr. Conkle stepped out, so I will continue where we left off as soon as they give me control.
Thank you.
So we talked a little bit about SDCs. We talked a little bit about what was discussed in October of 2023, and we gave you some responses to some of your questions you had in October of 23. And then where we left off was really the grant funding options that you have of either using the code for some sort of discount or finding some source of funds to use for some sort of program. And we gave some pros and cons. And then we introduced this adaptive reuse program. That's what it was called before. And we gave a few details on that. These were items that were part of those possible reimbursements in that adaptive reuse program. And this is kind of where we left off. So we're recommending a similar program. We could name it whatever we choose to name it. But we think the best use of ways to assist older buildings or certain types of buildings to redevelop, to stay viable, to stay usable, is to reimburse some of the improvements of which they need to stay that way. That may be to update their HVAC system. It may be a structural upgrade so that they can add upper floor housing. It may be that they want to switch their use from a storage facility to a restaurant, for example. Those things almost always come with increases in SDCs because the uses often are more intensive than the previous use. And so how do we counter that increase in SDCs? And one way of doing that would be to assist financially with the improvements to those upgrades to create the use that they're looking for. So what kind of criteria do we use to create such a program? One thing that we had thought about was, and this is through numerous other discussions that we've had of, well, should we only focus on historically designated properties? Should we focus on historically eligible properties, those properties which could likely get historic status but don't currently have that status? What boundaries should we use? Should we open this up to all of city limits? Should we look at just the TSDC area that we talked about earlier where the transportation zone is? Should we look at the urban renewal zone? We're going to show you some examples later. Should we look at a specific building age? A building that is of a certain age or older is the one that's eligible. Should we make sure that this is for redevelopment and not new development? If it's a vacant parcel within whatever boundary we're looking at, do we only want to look at redevelopment, that it has to be something that you're rehabbing, not something that you're creating new? Or would you like something for new and have some sort of assistance that way? So here's some examples. Here's a picture that is a boundary of the original city limit, and I know it's small and there's lots of lines on there, but the darker line that goes around there is generally, there's some caveats to that I won't go into, but the original city limit of Oregon City. Is that what we want to use? Because clearly that's a much older area, and maybe that's the area we're trying to revitalize or remain vitalized. Do we want to use the urban renewal district? Now, if you use urban renewal funds, you would likely have to use that district. If you use other funds, it could be a different area, but this is what that looks like. that TSDC discount area for transportation that makes things discounted to make it mimic a shopping center that I spoke about earlier. That's in 3 different colors, the magenta or purple color that goes up Malala and 7th Street, the teal or cyan color that is much of the urban renewal district area, the downtown area, it's all MUD zoned, as well as the Willamette Falls district. Again, historically designated properties, what does that look like? So what this is showing you in the magenta color is the historic properties currently designated in the McLaughlin Conservation District. In Kanema, not surprisingly, in the Kanema District, are the yellow ones. And then there are a smattering of others in kind of a reddish color that are throughout the rest of the city. Now you'll see that the entire city limits is not shown on that map, and that is because there are no other historic properties outside of what I'm showing right there. So I cut that off for a reason to try and make that as big as humanly possible on our screens. But it kind of shows you where the historic focus is in the majority of the city. But there is more that's eligible. Now the picture on the left is zoomed out just to kind of show that there are some other areas out there, but I zoomed in to the downtown area to show kind of where the mass of those areas are. And there are a lot of properties that are historically eligible, they just haven't become historic yet, if that became a criteria you were looking for to use. So what I have here is 3 questions. The first question goes to an October 2023 question. The other 2 questions go to this grant program. And so what we're looking for here is some sort of guidance, some direction by the commission on how do we move forward. The first question is, does the City Commission wish to provide an additional SDC discount or exemption for middle housing? Now remember I said that middle housing already gets a 20% discount, that the cost of a middle housing, a duplex, triplex, or quadplex, or cluster house per unit is 80% the cost of a single family. And so is that sufficient now? If not, what would you like to do? And if so, just know that requires a code amendment. So we'd be looking for some discussion on that.
You want to just start with that one?
Yeah, that's what I'd prefer rather than go into the next slide.
Okay, gentlemen. Mike, you have thoughts?
I guess my thought is I think the discussion of residential SDCs is a much bigger discussion. And I don't know that I'm ready to weigh in on this one particular question when I'd kind of like to look at the whole thing.
I think this is something we could bring back. I had a conversation with Mr. Mitchell and provided the system development charge, residential system development charge sheets that we have on our website that we utilize. And I think maybe that's something we bring back and walk through that shows the difference between a single family, because there are nuances in there, right? Especially as it relates to the system development charges associated with water environmental services, and their discount based on the square footage size of a home. And then, we have single family attached, we have apartment, we have ADU, we have duplex, right? So maybe that is a separate conversation that we could dive into the actual SDC of each building type.
I would totally agree with you, Michael. It's a bigger conversation. I think what we were talking about and what I was suggesting that we look at is some sort of program for the historic core that was similar to the adaptive reuse program that we had before to help people with these older buildings, which are seismically challenged and many other things. And I think we need to look at a program. Like I said, maybe the easiest way is to take the program we already had and modify it, and that's going to take a little bit more time. I'm not, the SDC thing about middle housing is a completely different topic than the one that I was leaning into with regard to our downtown buildings that may be historically eligible, and we have many of them, so.
And that would be what our second question was. Part of the presentation was just to make sure we were answering that October 23 question, but If the other commissioners agree that that's a good topic for a future meeting, then I can move on to the second question.
I will just add that in addition to middle housing, because middle housing is the duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, cottage clusters, and townhouses, that we also look at multifamily as well. Obviously understanding that it has its own unique formula, but if we're looking at reductions, what I'm thinking about specifically where I would like to see more housing is on upper floor on Main Street. And that's the kind of incentives that I think we should also remember to include as we have this larger discussion. But I agree, I would prefer to just focus on the commercial right now.
Yeah, I agree with you on the housing, but to me, it's a little bit separate from middle housing. It's sort of a little different of an animal.
Well, seeing some head nods and some discussion there, and in the sake of time, I'll move on to the second question. So does the City Commission want staff to prepare a funding grant program to assist redevelopment cost? And if so, should that be via a code discount or through the general fund or urban renewal? And I'll show you the third question because it's going to relate. No matter where that funding is provided, what criteria should be included? So are we looking at historically designated, historically eligible, boundary of the city, location, no boundary at all, those things. So first is, do you want to create a program and how would you like to potentially fund it or code change it? And then second, some of your criteria.
Can we work backwards from that, decide what we want to be in it, and then decide about how we want to fund it? Because I don't support it being for new development. It's got to be for redevelopment, which is what we already have. And I think that it needs to be buildings that are historically eligible within the urban renewal boundary. I said I hope Springs Eternal that we're going to be able to use some of that money, so it might have to be a combination. We only have one designated building downtown. At least the one I'm aware of that's on the National Register.
How old does a building have to be historically eligible?
It needs to be at least 50. And I would say the ones that are identified in our downtown historic inventory, we've got a number on the list, probably, I would say at least 10 to 12. There are some that are what I would say beyond taking them back. But that doesn't mean that they couldn't apply for a tenant improvement. But in terms of them being eligible, give you an example. So a building that would be eligible for the National Register would be the Masonic Lodge, but they would have to remove the plastic windows. Other than that, it's pretty well intact. But it is National Register. The courthouse is eligible for both the city's inventory, landmark status, and National Register. 1933 Art Deco.
Well, I definitely agree that should be for redevelopment.
Do we have consensus on that?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so definitely not for new development. And it wouldn't apply to somebody who tears something down and then wants to build something new either.
I guess I'm leaning a little more toward specific building age, and you could make it 50 years.
50 is the criteria.
Yeah, but instead of saying historically eligible, just go by the building age.
I would say that having it be historically eligible is a definite bonus, because then they can apply for historic rehab tax credits, which would couple very nicely with anything we would be creating.
Well, a building that's 50 years old,
it can be 50 years, it has to be at least 50 years old to be historically eligible. It's got to have some character defining features on it. There's the building down there that's got that I would say it's got foam that was put on the exterior of it. I don't think that stuff is coming off anytime soon. That would not, it may be old, but it's not eligible. You can't even tell it's old anymore because of the alteration that was made to it.
So what I'm trying to do, in my mind, decide is it the building age that matters, or is it whether or not it's historically eligible that matters?
They're
And I'm
not,
not sure.
they're not separated. They're the same thing, basically. If it's historically eligible, it's going to be 50 years or older.
And I would
But
add,
there are buildings that are 50 years old that aren't historically eligible, right?
that is correct, according to Christina Robertson Gartner, who
Yes.
takes care
Like
of
I
that
said,
for
I
us.
just listed off a couple of them that, well, they've been severely compromised.
Along the same line of discussion, what there's no real incentive, even if we award money, that, I mean, I guess I don't understand why it is important that they're historically eligible, because the likelihood of them trying to make them designated even after they get the money is rare. I mean, we only have one building downtown anyway, because those building owners don't want to be set in stone on what they can do with their buildings. So giving money to a historically eligible building doesn't make any difference in the future whether or not they go towards that, unless we
That
made
may
it
be
that
something
way.
we might ask them to do that.
Well,
Because
and that's a different story.
there's grants and funding available from the state that basically, that's called Diamonds in the Rough.
Okay.
Our
Well,
friends at John Q. Adams and 7th, that's the money some of the money they got. And one of the criteria for Diamonds in the Rough is it has to be on a local inventory, which their building was. And they received a nice little chunk of change that went along with some other funding they received so it's an incentive, I think, to be eligible. That way you can get your opportunities for additional funding are far more greater than any building that's not. Our money will be like a little drop in the bucket, but you combine it with other funding sources, it makes a lot of difference.
Well, I would love to see that work. I guess my
We can
worry,
add that and maybe,
Yeah.
suggest
I
we add
guess
that.
my worry
I
is-
agree with you, Rocky.
as being, because I would love to see some of those buildings do that. We just know the hoop of the leap that takes for business owners to do that. And if this is something that helps that, I guess I'd be supportive of it. But here's the problem.
But we're talking about property owners, not the business owner.
Yes, sure. But on the same token, when we did this grant for in urban renewal, as well, I know there was several grants, and I'm not going to name them, but by memory, there was multiple that say, hey, we want this grant for urban renewal to renovate the inside of our building because we're going to take it from this non-use to this use that we really want. And we thought, oh, that's exciting. We gave them the money, and then that use never came about.
Well,
same thing with this. If we gave them the money towards working towards historic registration and they never do it, then, what are
we get the money back.
Well, and we've never done that. I mean, we've done this so many times in urban renewal where we didn't go back and account for that. And I think if we can make sure, and I don't know how you do that, because not every thing's going to go forward exactly perfectly. You can say, well, we'd love to renovate this building to have housing in the second floors, but there's no guarantee that'll ever happen.
Well, they have to, the thing we did with our grant before when Lloyd was administering it, they had a 5-year time frame where they had to maintain, and Herb Arbor took advantage of one of those adaptive reuse grants for his downstairs, and he got it done.
Well, the ones that I remember didn't get done.
Yeah, well, that way we have to make sure we hold their feet to the fire. This is a different commission than it was before. And if we give people money, we have a certain expectation that what they say they're going to do gets done, and we take the money back. They have to repay it. That's pure and simple. It's not free without any consequences. Was there any provision in the previous grant program, Josh, that you're aware of that was said, obligated them to complete the project or do it?
The program was a reimbursement program, so the work had to occur. So if they were doing a rehab, all the work and the permits had to be permits had to be issued, work had to be done, and once it was done, then they got reimbursed back. So the work was done, but was there any provision for anything after that? I don't know.
Yeah, see,
Right.
that's how they're on the hook, Rocky, is that it's reimbursable. We're not just giving them money. They have to perform in order to get the reimbursement.
But I don't remember any, like, requirements to be designated, right, out of the project.
No, we didn't have that from
I don't
before.
remember any
never
of
touched on
those
that.
specifically.
Yeah, we
No.
never touched on that.
And I don't think we had like a, you know, like I can remember a couple where they were going to bring a business in, right? And they
Right.
did. The one, like some of the successful ones when they did, but I don't remember, like some grants you'll see, you know, you have to be, if you say you're going to bring 25 employees, right? 3-4 years, whatever it is, you have to have 25 employees, right?
Right.
You receive a little bit of money every time. I don't ever remember doing that. I remember it being more
We didn't
of,
do that.
you finished the TI, showed us the receipts, we reimbursed up to the grant
Right.
amount. I don't remember there being like a long-term, multiple-year commitment.
No.
We had a program like that at
They said,
PDC
"Oh,
where they had to show for a certain amount of time the number of employees, and if they didn't, then they had to reimburse the money.
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said. Mary, I didn't hear what you said because I was speaking.
Oh, I said we had a program where I worked where they were required to maintain, it was a jobs and tenant improvement. They had to show so many jobs and they had to document that. Otherwise, they were on the hook for the funding.
Yeah.
And we got them, you know, when somebody didn't meet that, they got the money back. There was no exception. That was what they signed up for. But I think the reimbursable thing is critical because you don't get the money. That's the grant that we're working on right now downtown. The work has to be performed and then they apply for the reimbursement.
And the other thing that I would add,
Only fair way.
the other thing I would add, in looking at a commissioner report from 2012 is, the commission had the ability to approve the grant awards, and so the projects had to meet a specific criteria. You know, it couldn't just be something like, you know, add a restroom because we could use another restroom or something like that. It had
Right.
to have a number of criteria, like here's one that seismically upgraded a building, it was gonna have a staff of 12, it was gonna reuse existing materials where possible. So I think there was some sort of goal in the program that helped it define how to get the grant. Once they got the grant, then they had to do the work and then get reimbursed for that.
Like I said, I was hoping we could just take the old program and modify it to some degree to meet what we want to try to do this time and do that maybe and then have a more discussion about it so we actually have something we're kind of looking at. But
Is the goal, I've heard a couple things, you know, buildings over 50 years versus incentivizing residential versus, you know, one of the, I think back then the goal was to try to just get investment downtown, honestly. You know, I think some of the criteria had to deal with, you know, could you bring in employment, but it, you know, that was like worth some points, but it was never, I don't remember it being, I agree with you, right? There were some that were successful and there's some that didn't quite.
no, that wasn't our
Hit the
part
target.
criteria. There was the point scale, like you said.
Like us to kind of take the criteria we had before, kind of package that up into something that could be discussed,
I think that's a great idea.
think about it a little more. Which money tree we're gonna ring.
That's for the color printer in the basement, 3D printer in the works. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. You guys okay with that? They'll bring something back and we can kind of mash it over and chew on it.
I'd like to have a stronger discussion about what the real outcome is supposed to be. The truth is even if they say, hey, we're inclined to put this building on a historic register. This is the steps we need to do and do it. And we say, great, put in new windows, whatever. And then we put in their new windows and they never go forward to designate because they want to change the building in 10 years. That's a problem. And if the goal is to support housing in the upper floors and we do that and then they decide later they're just going to use it for offices, then why did we do that? And if it's just putting investment into downtown, let's just say that, just hand out money.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
We haven't been able to ever solidify that money is going to the purpose that we sought when we really said. We've seen things, like we're going to renovate this building so we can put a restaurant in it. Well, the restaurant never came, but the building got fixed, So
a different commission, we're
the
a
hope
little
is
more
that we get a
hard-nosed
new
about it.
tenant in that building, that's great. But if we're pitched a restaurant and the restaurant never comes and it's an office, then maybe they shouldn't have got the money. So we got to be very specific about what we want and what the outcome's going to be and hold them to it somehow. I don't know, and we haven't yet been able to do that.
Or is the goal, I'm just throwing this out, or is the goal bigger than that? The goal is just to renovate, update, improve older rundown buildings downtown, period.
Right.
Whether it's for a restaurant,
like
housing.
Our storefront Grand Square, and that was successful because it did what we,
Right, the end
It's to
use.
incentivize
the market
reinvestment
needs to tell
in
us what the
downtown.
end use is going to be. What our intention is to make it a more of an asset to our downtown, and hopefully does all these other cool things. But I think it's just a big goal.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you. It's to incentivize reinvestment, to invigorate and jumpstart downtown so that we have an active, vibrant, we're calling ourselves historic downtown Oregon City, but it's technically not really, it's only historic in name, it's not historic in deed. We can deal with that as another issue. I want to see us help people do something with stuff that they've got down there because it's a wasted asset, and putting residential would help.
Just two quick things, Mayor. So I would say, first of all, I would prefer that we really haven't gotten into funding because we're having a lot of prior conversations of that, but just in anticipation of that, I'll say the way that I'm leaning is that I would much prefer to be doing this through urban renewal, depending on our ability to do so. Barring that, and if we aren't able to, looking at an existing source of funding so we don't shortchange our SDCs. Something that went through my mind, and before anyone comes at me, just let me finish, is I was thinking about the sidewalk replacement assistance program, which I think has been a huge success. But ideally, as that program continues moving on, the hope would be that not as many people are needing to use it because those repairs are being made. And I think the city has done a great job at getting out to the neighborhoods and communicating that this is a program that we want people to take advantage of. But I do believe that over just the 1 or 2 years that we've been doing this, that my assumption would be that things have maybe slowed down a little bit. And I'm getting a head nod from Mr. Wheeler. So when we're
correct.
I think we just need to check. That might be transportation funding rather than general fund money. I got to check that. For some reason, I'm thinking it was gas tax money.
You are correct, Mr. Conkle, that while that program may decline over time, the expenses are showing a decline, although the amount of code enforcement is still pretty high. It is designated funds that have to be used for a transportation purpose.
Could it go toward transportation SDCs?
That's something we would have to look into.
Okay, I just wanted to throw that out as a suggestion because if we are not able to use urban renewal, which again is my preference, knowing that we will have to cut something else is just something that we need to be thinking about far ahead in advance.
No, you're correct.
And I'll go along with that and say that of the three options you presented, the one actually reducing the SDC fee is off the list for as far as I'm concerned. And urban renewal would be number one, and general fund would be number two. And that's setting aside the whole urban renewal question.
Yeah. the problem with the SDC reduction is that it has to be made up someplace else. And I was not initially feeling that way, but after having a discussion with Mr. Wheeler and Mr. Lewis, I'm leaning more towards their concern. Because it's not always about the SDC, it's really about the issue of adaptive reuse. Well, you're right, Rocky, I hear the fireworks.
Oh, I didn't think they had them on Thursdays.
I don't know, I hear boom, 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 and I can see something in the
I don't know what
sky.
hell day it is. They're supposed to only have fireworks on Friday, Saturday nights, I think on the weekends, so maybe they have another show, but.
So it sounds like we could take the previous program and like pull those criteria that were utilized forward, bring this back for a discussion focusing on really, here's the criteria we used before, here was the objective of that program, what do we want the objective of this potential new program to be, and kind of begin this discussion there. Is that reasonable, or?
And potential financing, funding options, and what that might look like.
Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you, guys.
Can I?
All right.
Can I throw out
So,
two?
absolutely.
And I don't, maybe this is a separate discussion, and I kind of hate to bring it up because looking at the history, we've been bouncing back and forth, and I'm sure there was a good reason why it was decided the way it was, whenever it was decided. But if you look at other cities comparable to us on your comparison, look back to 2000, we are out of step with pretty much everybody else. Everybody else either has no look back date or it's back in the 70s. And I'm also struggling with most recent use and most intensive use. And again, I think it's something that bounced back and forth, but I have a little bit of trouble with most recent as opposed to most intensive. And maybe that's probably another discussion for another day, and I probably just muddied the water. So let's get the basics of a program together, and then look at how our actual SDCs are calculated.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to commission reports. I know you guys got a long day and want to get done in the next 10 minutes. So, Commissioner Smith, what's going on with Clackamas Heritage Partners? Is there a proposal out to look for a new ED?
Well, actually, we haven't had a meeting, but I know that there were interviews for a replacement for Gail's position, but we haven't had a meeting. I think our meeting is scheduled for Thursday, but I haven't confirmed that. I can't remember what we went over at our last South Fork meeting. Do we have a report from South Fork?
I have my notes here. We had Libby from Consor talk to us about, let's see here. I've got my notes. Talking about a plan for public engagement well in advance of us coming out and asking for any funding, but we're doing we got an overview of water quality, resilience, and capacity, our capital projects update, and they're putting together numbers for what that might be. We're looking at sources and methods of future funding. That's what I've got in a nutshell.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's it. And the conference that you're at right now.
Okay, Mr. Marl.
Yes, so CIC, prior to our regular meeting this month, we actually held a work session to talk further about the budget, and I think that there was a good outcome from the way that I interpreted it. I believe that the CIC is moving forward with trying to reapportion the way that they dole out the money that we give to them. So looking at how many meetings they have per year rather than strictly how many households are in the neighborhood. And there was conversations from certain, neighborhoods about maybe looking at how many meetings they have per year. For example, if there's a neighborhood that has 6 per year and there isn't great attendance, maybe looking at reducing that to try and gain more attendance from residents. So I thought that was a really productive work session, and we all, I think, started at the same baseline that the money is still there and the money has gone unspent for several budget cycles now. It's just been a matter of making sure that it is apportioned correctly, and that if for some reason there is a shortfall, that would absolutely be something that we would be looking into. C4, which is apparently the mayor's favorite subject, we have our upcoming retreat this weekend on Friday and Saturday. We're going to be discussing transportation, which includes tolling, but also looks ahead to the 2025 transportation package in the state legislature and what it is we'd like to see there. We're also going to be talking about housing and economic development as well, but I think at least for me, I'm most looking forward to the transportation conversation. And then Youth Advisory Commission, we had our final meeting of this term last night. They got a tour of the Public Works and Operations building. They went over bylaws and the ordinance that originally created that body, looking over things that have worked and things that haven't worked. And so coming up here soon, we're going to see a recommendation for edits and revisions to that. We talked about recruitment going on. I'm really excited because this morning I spoke at CASE with some students about the potential of applying for the Youth Advisory Commission. And then this afternoon, I got notification that we had 2 applicants that afternoon from CASE. So really
awesome.
Excited about
Thank you.
that. Yes, thank you. And then the clothing drive did occur, and I thought it was a success, and I'm really excited to see that we ended up we finished off our first final full session with such a great event, and so I appreciate all the work that has gone into that from staff. Lastly, this is something I just want to throw out there. This isn't a committee report, but I was recently talking to one of our colleagues on Milwaukee City Council about a variety of things, and she brought up the Homeless Solutions Coalition of Clackamas County and noted that their city council actually has a liaison to the Homeless Solutions Coalition of Clackamas County. And I was wondering if we thought it might be a good idea for us to have a commission liaison to that body so that we can all be better informed about what's going on. And when we do get those many questions that we get about this project, which we are not a part of, that we would have someone on the inside who's at least being able to relay that information to us, and also being able to relay our concerns to them in the moment at those meetings, rather than us having to be more reactive and host a meeting specifically related to that. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Anyway, just for your information, Mr. Smith, there are fireworks going off like crazy. I can hear them.
I think it's part of
Mr. Mitchell.
I'll just start by saying I think that liaison idea is a great idea.
Yeah.
Let's have further discussion about it.
From C4 Metro, I had mentioned a few meetings ago that SMART, Wilsonville's bus system, was working on a bus on shoulder program between Wilsonville and Clackamas Town Center, and that's actually going to happen. They're looking at it's going to launch in November. They've got the buses, either they already have them or they're already ordered and they're going to be in by then, and they have to do a little bit of shoulder work, but that's actually going to happen with a stop.
What does that mean?
The bus is going to travel its route on the shoulder of I-205 from Wilsonville to Clackamas Town Center, and there's a sign on the back of the bus that says bus on shoulder and warning signs or whatever. going from Clackamas, from Wilsonville to Clackamas Town Center with a stop at our transit center in downtown Oregon City, which we just talked about earlier. The other thing, really quickly, at the Metro Urban Growth Boundary Roundtable, they give us a little bit of information on how we're going to be given our share of housing that's necessary. Metro is going to be coming up with a number this fall for the whole metro area, and then the State Department of Administrative Services, whoever that is going to allocate that to cities. There's two parts of that. There's how many housing units we need to build to catch up from how far we're behind, and then added to that how many we need going forward. And so each city is going to be given a number, adding up those two components. But we're also, every city they're going to look back somehow, and we're going to get credit for housing units that we've built toward that target over the last, I don't know how far they're going to go back. So if you've built housing already to help catch up, you're going to get credit for having done that. So, and they're looking at it's a 6-year target that they're working on. And like I said, the Metro number is going to be produced this fall sometime, and then they'll start allocating it out, whoever the mysterious Department of Administrative Services is. That's it from me.
Okay. Clackamas Water Environmental Services Policy Committee, the budget was approved on the 28th of April by the county commissioners. The Downtown Oregon City Association held a successful wine walk on the 18th of May. It was sold out. Impact, again, very similar to what Mike said about the housing numbers, although there was quite a bit of questioning from Happy Valley and Tigard about some of the numbers, and so they're going to go back and do some additional work. We probably will have a request. We have a request in from Metro to brief us about the proposed housing bond. We were supposed to hear about that at the Metro mixer, but Lynn Peterson was ill, so that did not take place. And I think that their Ms. Marissa Madrigal didn't want to get into it too much, so it didn't get discussed there. South Fork, I just told you what we did at our last meeting. Commissioner O'Donnell and I are attending the AWWA. My session today was talking all about how to remove things that we don't want in our water, in the water, and taking it out of the water. A lot of things we are already doing at South Fork, but there's obviously a lot more that we can do. Willamette Falls and Landings Heritage Area, we had a program at the Wilsonville Library on the influence of the Chinese community along the landings areas on the Willamette. Legacy Project, obviously, you know that Governor Brown was named the new new executive director, taking the place of Andrew Mason. We're looking forward to having some conversations with them. And the locks authorities that we've been approving some of our financial policies and arrangements to, and our IGA we have with the Corps of Engineers on the work. They're still continuing to work on the locks. We're finalizing that IGA. And then you heard from Adam already about the Youth Advisory Commission. We said we're saying goodbye to 4 seniors, Bella, Henry, Bailey, and Brianna, who will be graduating, and they've all been very outstanding students. Adam said the clothing drive was a really good project. Looks like they probably want to continue that next year. We now, I think, as Adam said, we got 2 applications. I haven't seen them yet, but there's 2 more that are pending. So hopefully, when I get back, I can make sure that we have a meeting with Oxla. I gave a talk about how you create an ordinance and a resolution at Springwater Environmental. And I talked to the 8th graders about the Youth Advisory Commission as well. So we're getting the word out there, and I'm trying to get an appointment to go to North Christian School to talk to their students about the program as well. We had a student our first year from there, and he ended up being our vice president. So other than that, the event with the Cayuse the Cayuse Memorial. I just want to again commend staff on their exceptional work. And even though it was a very, very long program, it was very meaningful. And we talked about it before, but I think I've heard a lot of really good comments about the press release that was sent out. And also want the staff to know that Hannah Schmidt has been doing an amazing job. And she's had, I would say, the patience of Job. Sometimes the students don't respond, and she was very clear at our last meeting that she is expecting responses from them. So we will emphasize that a little more. And that's it. Anything at the end, Mr. Conkle, or are we ready to adjourn?
Ready to adjourn.
All right. I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, gentlemen. And Mr. Wiley, I will see you Friday morning to sign everything that I need to sign. Is that okay?
Yep, sounds good.